Hello and welcome everybody, I'm on Proper Varian, and as you can see I have ascended. Now with that being said, this is number 37 of the CK3 Dev Diaries. This is a very interesting one, primarily of course for modders and targeted at modders, because it is everything about modding and modding capabilities in CK3, especially compared to Crusader Kings II. But this one is also very interesting for you, because I want to highlight what this means for you as an end consumer with any mods, be it small mods, be it big mods, be it mods that come out tomorrow, well not tomorrow, but you know, one day after release, and be it mods that come out 2 years after release. The changes between CK3 and CK2 don't have to be understood in detail by you that you want to play the mods, but I think that, you know, you can essentially see what Paradox has done here in laying a groundwork that is so different and so much more appropriate for a game like this, because it gives so much more opportunities for modding. I really want to dive into this one, but before we do that, I want to point out that there was a video today by Kings and Generals, amazing channel just for the record here, and it was a video about the 867 start date, and it was amazing. If you haven't seen it, link will be in the description. I'm in love with that video, sponsored by Paradox, that video, not me saying it. I'm in love with that video because I always think that that really helps in the immersion, no matter where you play, no matter where you want to play. Now, tomorrow is also yet another really big day for Crusader Kings III, because tomorrow you will have a dev Q&A chat that will happen midday CEST, so European time. It will happen in the CK3 Dev Discord. You can check it out. Link is of course also in the description. Then what's next is there will be a live stream tomorrow, so that is on Twitch, Paradox Interactive's channel. And then last but not least, if the pattern holds up, I don't know that, but I'm guessing here. If the pattern holds up, there will be tomorrow yet another video on the Introducing CK3 series. Go check it out. Again, big day tomorrow. If you want to keep up to date with Crusader Kings III, then I think tomorrow is the day where you want to, you know, maybe suddenly fall ill so that you cannot go to work and have to watch those videos. Now, with all that being said, you can of course watch it, you know, when it's not live, not when it comes out right away, but I just want to remind you, hey, there is so much stuff dropping, much like this new Kings and General video. Very exciting stuff. Now, with all that being said, let's jump into this dev diary, and we're going to essentially make our way quickly here through the new modification opportunities, and then I'm going to talk about what I think that this means for us as end consumers. This one was written by Matthew, Black Ninja 9939, and I got started at Paradox as a content designer due to my modding work on Crusader Kings II. So being able to make sure the sequel has lots of modding opportunities and trying to give back to the community that aided me in getting into this industry is something I am very passionate about. I have talked in the past to Matthew. Great guy, very great guy, very active actually in generally talking to the community, very active in the CK3 Discord as well. And when I read this, I thought to myself, wait a minute, I know that Matthew worked on the Game of Thrones mod, and then I found this and I was like, this is just hilarious. Look at this, 2017, apparently Black Ninja, or an imposter, has been hired by Paradox and is now a graduate content designer. And then he responded, well, only a temporary worker over summer for now. Thanks, was gonna make a post about it if I get a full position, probably still will if I do, but thank you, observant person. And now 3 years, oh god, time is flying. 3 years later, Matthew is writing this dev diary here as a programmer and as somebody that has been working on CK3. If you remember, Matthew was the driving force, although of course, you know, there's a lot of teamwork going on, so I don't want to diminish anybody's contribution here, but Matthew was the driving force between the vassal contract rework, if I understand it correctly, so I think his name has a certain reputation attached to, you know, his work and his input. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at what they changed and what we can expect from Crusader Kings III modding. We've got over 80 database object folders, some even with subfolders, a very versatile event system structure, a GUI system that can be fully changed, history files, localization, sound, music, and more. So huge parts of the game can be changed to suit your needs. Now, you don't need to understand what this means. All you need to know, the more folders you have here, the more values are changeable and are quickly changeable because you just have them in files, they're not hard-coded. All of this can be done by somebody that can read Paradox script, which is essentially, you know, fake code, so to speak. Now, the most important thing here is essentially that they splintered this even more. They added many more things that you can now edit that previously in Crusader Kings II were hard-coded, couldn't be edited, and couldn't be changed, meaning that any modder that, you know, wanted to do anything with them would have to work sort of around it instead of with the mechanic. Crusader Kings III is based on an in-house grand strategy library called Jomini, which acts as a more GSG-focused layer used on top of our Clausewitz engines. So this is something that has been discussed a bit, because you know, Clausewitz is of course the thing that came after the Europa engine, at least I think that was the official name of it, but the Clausewitz engine has been around for a long time, and it is still the Clausewitz engine, but they added a massive layer on top of it, the Jomini layer as they call it, that essentially, if I understand it correctly, which I probably don't, let's be honest here, but if I understand it correctly, it essentially means that the Jomini layer is sort of there as a base level for any game developed in it, meaning that you can easily do something on the game level then with whatever Jomini gives you. For example, you know, how do very basic things of the game work? Now again, probably not correct, but what matters is it makes it much more flexible and it makes it much more, you know, much easier to kind of work in it. Now let's talk about character interactions. For a brief history lesson in CK2 modding, most of these core interactions were hard-coded, things like arranging marriages, declaring war alliances, etc. It was only after quite a few patches that the ability to add custom targeted decisions was introduced, and it's worth noting that it was only the ability to add or modify those targeted decisions. The older hard-coded core interactions were still not particularly moddable. So you can see Crusader Kings II, as moddable as it is and as many amazing mods that it has received, was on a fundamental level not very easy to edit because it just wasn't intended like that. I mean, you gotta think back, you know, this was 2018. How much was Paradox truly, I mean, even back then, of course, for Crusader Kings 1, there was a bunch of mods, so many mods for Crusader Kings 1, actually incredible. Game of Thrones mod as well. I don't know whether you've seen that, really fun stuff, but the idea of modding and accessibility for modding wasn't as progressed in any way whatsoever. And by the way, I am melting, if you were wondering. My god, the temperatures are way too high, but essentially it wasn't progressed in any way even close to how it has progressed now. For CK3, we wanted to open all of that up to go through one unified character interaction system, so every action goes through our script system now. This gives many benefits. With script being able to change it, we can now change weights of the for the AI's use of these actions with just a few text file changes instead of needing code time. So essentially, this was hard-coded and is now on the script layer, on this, you know, fake coding language, so to speak, on the Paradox script, and is now accessible both by modders but also by regular content designers in the CK3 and just generally Paradox interactive team, I guess. We can now change this, blah blah, exactly. We can change who can do them and what people are considered good matches, etc. And of course that opens it all up for modders as well. This is really good news because it just means essentially that many of the workarounds that we've seen in Crusader Kings 2 mods, how these things work, and you know, for example, in Warhammer, I'm pretty sure there is a workaround in the works there, or well, they are using a workaround, I should say, but essentially it is difficult to always determine how exactly somebody, for example, can get married to somebody else and whether they will ever even consider it. And this now being open to saying, okay, this will be considered in the following way and I can do this via the script language is much easier for any modder to, you know, implement that without having to work around it, meaning there is a bit of a, you know, the development time, I guess, goes down a bit, but, and I want to stress that doesn't mean that you should expect any large mods, you know, in like the first year of, and yeah, I just said year, in the first year after release. I think the first big total conversions, be that after the end Fanfork, a Game of Thrones, Elder Kings, whatever else there's so many great mods, but I think the very first really big total conversions for CK3, even if it is more accessible, you shouldn't expect those before like a year after release, maybe even longer. We'll see about it, okay? But anyway, it is all much more accessible. The AI can also be scripted to use all of those custom interactions, tell them who's a good target, as well as how often they should evaluate it, which is important for performance. What you can see right here is essentially what they open up here. For reference, here's a full list of all the options interactions can use that impact how they are taken, received, responded to, shown graphically, and used by the AI. I'll be honest with you, I don't think we need to go through these in detail. You can see it's some very basic stuff. I mean, all of these are very modular, of course, you know, how you can approach it. Here you see, for example, pause the game on receive. It usually makes sense to combine it with pop-up on receive. So as you can see right here, all of this stuff is something where you just give much more basic freedom to modders in how they script, how their events pop up, how their general, you know, decisions and new mechanics pop up, and how they are translated, or rather transmitted to the player. Really cool stuff, really interesting stuff. Combining mods is also much easier. To aid in this, I've made it so database entries, I can't read anymore, can be overridden by key, even if that new entry is in a different file. So this just makes it so that mods should be much more easy, or rather easy to have compatible. I don't know, I still think compatibility patches will be possible, or rather necessary, but whether that will be the case, I honestly can't quite tell you. It's just essentially so that you don't need to copy the full file. It just makes it so that you just need to go with this and can modify, for example, the lunatic trait without having to go through all of the traits in a new file for your mod. What you can see right here is that essentially this code modifies the lunatic trait to have learning plus 20, prowess plus 10, attraction opinion plus 50%. Well, okay then. Interesting. I don't know how exactly this will work out. I assume that most mods still won't be compatible because, of course, once something edits something that something else also edits, these two will always clash. You can't stop that. But I hope that in particular submods, etc., will be a bit easier to program and make it so that, you know, more people can get into modding in general. Alerts, issues, and notification. Let's jump to that. All of the new interface utilities we have for explaining the game are moddable, which means you can add, remove, and modify any of these things through script instead of them being hard-coded like in CK2. This is big because we already learned about the tooltips and that they can be frozen. You know, you can make it so that the tooltip kind of locks into place. We already learned about the encyclopedia in Crusader Kings III, meaning that you no longer, if you see a game mechanic that you don't know about, have to go search the wiki, go to the Discord, ask somebody in a YouTube comment section. All of those things will be a thing of the past because all of that will be explained in-game, and all of that will also be explained in-game for modders, and this is one of the biggest things that I'm actually a huge fan of. So let me paint you this picture. After the End Fanfork has this amazing system for presidential elections. Really cool, there's a lot of waiting going on, very, very neat stuff going on, but it is all, first of all, but this is a UI topic, a bit something else here again. There is essentially this window that comes up, this text window, this event window that says, okay, these are the candidates in running and these are the polls. And it's just like, the presentation is really bad. Now, is this the fault of After the End Fanfork? No. Absolutely not. It's just you can't really depict it any better. In Elder Kings, another great example for this, I think, is that you have so many mechanics like the Elder Council, you have so many mechanics like the magic system, but the interface and the way you make the player aware of it is really bad because you can't really mod it in a feasible way. Now, the thing about this is, imagine this click me thing. So this is essentially, hey, this isn't necessarily, hey, you should know about this because this is important for you right now. This is more, hey, you should know about this because you might not be aware that this exists. Now imagine the following. You see this little thing, this icon says, hey, we have a magic system in CK3 Elder Kings, did you know that? So, you know, here's everything that you need to know about this, and here's where you can learn about this. I think this can be really, really good in terms of making it so that mods no longer struggle at convincing the player that their new systems are worthwhile checking out. Most of the time when a mod in Crusader Kings 2 implements a new mechanic system, you as the player are either not aware or you've read, for example, the dev diaries on the forums or, you know, whatever else in their Discord, for example, that sort of stuff. But if you're a completely new player, or rather new to that mod, and you say, I want to check it out, most of the time you'll have no idea what the hell is going on. So many different mechanics, so many different new numbers, so many different new weightings, so many new different approaches to any given opportunity. And all of that will now be properly transmittable in any given mod if they mod this in. I think this is a huge opportunity for mods to become more accessible, especially if they are total conversion or total overhaul mods for that record as well. Whilst making this dev diary, I actually found out that in 1.0, adding a custom icon like you see via a mod is actually not functional. It's already been fixed for 1.1, but I thought I should note that here quickly for people coming back to this dev diary to tell me off when it doesn't work right away. So essentially this just says, hey, this might not be possible in 1.0, but then again, you know, as a game company, they go gold. I don't know, I think like, I mean, let's not talk about No Man's Sky, but this is like the one thing where I remember that they went gold and made it public, and I think that was like 1 month prior to release, maybe 1.5 months, not entirely certain, but essentially the way I see it is that obviously this is already in, sadly doesn't work, but it will work quite soon once the 1.1 patch comes out, and I'll be honest with you, like the total overhaul, total conversion mods are about a year away from release anyway, after the actual release of CK3. But that aside, I think this is a huge opportunity to just make it so that the player is much, much more aware. For example, I'm thinking of After the End Fanfolk, they have this super complex system as well about the Californian Empire and how it handles itself and everything in between. But as a player, you have a tough time exploring those mechanics because it is very difficult to actually understand them and get a full rundown of them unless you go into external sources. And now in this one, you can actually just do that in the encyclopedia, in this click me thing, you know, in this sort of interface. Really exciting stuff, I think, for the end consumer here again. For example, and this can also be weighted, really interesting, in the fabricate claim suggestion, the weight is based on if there's anything nearby you could fabricate on, how many claims you already have, and if you're already fabricating a claim. The score for which title to suggest you fabricate is based on a much larger list of values such as the development title, level of the county, how easy it'll probably be to conquer if you share a faith or culture, etc. So there are so many different things when you, this would be the suggestion interface right here. There's so many different things where essentially modders can then make it clear what options you have and how those options should be weighted in the list so that the player has an easier time making a decision. Really, really good stuff. Now here's another thing that is really, really good stuff, and that is scripted GUI. Interface in CK3 is incredibly moddable. The GUI scripting language, whilst different from the normal database and event script, is still versatile and lets you change both the appearance and positioning and full functionality of almost all the GUI elements in the game. We also have a GUI debug mode in game, which allows viewing through the hierarchy and opening to the file and line of where elements are defined, which makes working with the interface a lot easier. This brings us to a pretty similar thing, not just that you can make people aware of the mechanics that you have, but also that the mechanics are depicted in their own good interfaces, something that you can't do in Crusader Kings 2, something that you very evidently can do in Crusader Kings 3. I'm really excited for that. I'm also, honestly, I just want to really play Elder Kings. Elder Kings modders, please. I need Elder Kings for Crusader Kings 3. Please do me the favor. But the way I see it, essentially in Elder Kings, one of the best examples, they have this amazing, magic system. They have this amazing Daedric system, and I will tell you that Daedric system is implemented via Jade Dragon's China interface. But I will tell you, if they could just make their very own interface and kind of structure it in a way where it specifically makes sense for the mechanic, instead of having to use an interface and then make the mechanic fit the interface, we would benefit. We all would benefit from that. So I'm really, really excited for all of this. I think the GUI modability here makes it so that not just will the mechanics be much more accessible because you can understand it much more easily, but also those mechanics will just work much more naturally and organically in Crusader Kings 3 as a whole, because they will be presented in a way that is much more accessible and fitting for the actual mechanics. Again, this event window for the presidential election in CK2 in After the End Fanfolk, not really suited for the presidential election. You need your own little window, and now that they can do that, very exciting. I'm very excited to see what people end up doing with this, especially. There should hopefully be a massive reduction in the number of hacks needed to display information now that real interfaces can be made for mods to show things about their unique mechanics. Matthew, 100% agreed. Beautiful. Now what you can see right here is one of those modded interfaces. This is essentially a character interaction window, and you can see right here there's a new button, do the murdering. So if you click this, this comes up to confirm, and then you confirm, and then, well, he was murdered in the murdering. This is the code for this. Don't worry too much about it. Again, not really relevant for us. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I know this diary might have some more niche appeal. I actually don't think so. Thank you, Matthew. I think this diary is super, super mainstream, because if you know just how much hope I have for these mods that are coming, then I think we can all appreciate this dev diary, even if we aren't into code and scripting and all that stuff. I will tell you, and I think I already mentioned this, but I will tell you now in a bit of a long format. I think we should not be expecting any large mods in under a year. It's just not really likely. Think about it. There's so much work that went into them in Crusader Kings 2, and I would hope, and I assume this to be true, that most of the people that made those mods won't, they are not going to say, I'm just going to translate the CK2 mod into CK3. They're saying we want to revamp this, we want to have a bit of a new start, a 2.0 if you will, and I really sincerely hope that this means, of course, that we're getting amazing, amazing mods, but let's be real here, the big mods, all of the big guns that, are of course already in Crusader Kings 2 will be in Crusader Kings 3 only a year or two after. It takes time to make good mods, and I want to use this opportunity to bring something into the public discussion that is somewhat normalized already, but I think should be normalized much, much more. I know that Guardians of Azeroth does it for Crusader Kings 2. They have a Patreon, right? And you can donate to that, then you can essentially, I think they hold polls where it's what kind of topic would you like us to work on next in the mod? And I think that is great. I think that is really, really good. Now, there are multiple aspects to this. I think what we should be much more open to when it comes to CK3, and what I'm definitely open to, if for example, a mod says, okay, we want to hire a proper 3D artist to, let's say, model Elder Kings models, that sort of stuff. If you want to do that, drop a Patreon link somewhere. I will be one of the first people that will be there to pay for that professional 3D artist. If somebody makes this sort of work happen, be it 3D artists or be it just normal modders, so to speak, I will pay for it, because it's completely deserved. It's so much more playtime that you get out of this stuff. So I just want to ask you as a community, how do you feel about crowd-funded modding experiences? I think that would be quite vital for Crusader Kings 2 because there's so many more in-depth system, and I don't think it's right to say, oh, you know, just do it for free, get out of here. I think they deserve some sort of reimbursement, even if it probably, I'll be honest with you, doesn't cover the costs. I mean, that would be very difficult. I would be a huge fan of it, just for the record, but I think that is quite difficult to do. And on top of that, and obviously, you don't have any power about that. I don't have any power over that. But on top of that, you know what I'm thinking? And this is just a wild suggestion. I want to kick out sort of into the conversation. What if Paradox held some sort of mod contests with subsidies attached to it? Subsidies. That sounds very odd. What I mean is essentially where we are kind of in a you know, situation where Paradox says, okay, we know our games live from the mods and we make it much more accessible than it has ever been, but we also know that with the added complexity of Crusader Kings 3 and the character models and everything, really, we need a lot more time investment. I would argue that, you know, hey, okay, I think as a community we can pitch in. I think we can make some money work for us there. But I also think that we're at a point where you can't really say, hey, Paradox just lets the modders run and that's fine. I think Paradox should probably become a bit more active and actually sort of, you know, subsidize it. I mean, probably just like more grants, you know, doing grants, so to speak, that sort of stuff. I think the Paradox interactive modding community needs to be upped in its game. Oh, sorry, I hit the mic there. Needs to be upped in its game, and that's again not really a question for the modders, that's a question for the communities. Again, if these modding teams were to come out and say, hey, here's my patron, or here's our patron, you know, Elder Kings, After the End Fanfolk, Guardians of Azeroth again already does it, I would be one of the first people to say, you know what, I'm pitching in. And I hope that, you know, maybe this is a conversation that is much more open than I fear it might be. I think a lot of people might just go, hey, we don't really want to pay for the mods, we just want to play them, which I get, but also feels a bit not right. And then I also hope that Paradox might just kind of, you know, jump into that breach, onto the breach, and sort of sees modding as a more professional endeavor as we go. I know Kaiserreich has made that jump. Kaiserreich is a huge brand at this point, you know, think about that. They have these huge stores and everything, and I think it would be nice if we could see that same development, but even grander in CK3 as well. Let me know what you think. I think this is important to me, especially in, you know, with the idea in mind that we will be seeing the first big mods only about in a year or more. So I think, you know, subsidizing that makes it a bit quicker, speeds it up a bit so that the modders can really focus on it. But with all of that being said, what sort of smaller mods would you like to see as we are going into this? What I am primarily looking forward to, I think, because I'm honestly, you know, like, when it comes to a lot of these mods, I think I'm in it for the vanilla experience, but I think long term what I would like to see, well, midterm, I guess, like a couple of months in, I would really like to see different approaches of maps. You guys already know this if you've watched my previous videos. I'm a fan of the map, of course, how could you not be, but I also want to see what it looks like as a pure paper map. The furthest zoom level, you know, if you followed CK3, the furthest zoom level is a paper map, and I would like that applied to everything. I would like to know what that looks like. Now, that being said, there's also another interesting tidbit right here. Matthew says that these letters, so I believe Czech, I want to say, honestly, it's just like, you know, with a what even is that, circumflex? Is that a turnaround circumflex? I don't know, but these should be able to be depicted in Crusader Kings 2, Crusader Kings 3, very, very cool, because CK2 did have a lot of limitations with that. Let me know what you think about both my suggestions when it comes to modding, but also modding in general. Beautiful. And of course, as always, at the end of this video, I would like to thank the members of the channel that are making videos such as this one possible. Namely, of course, the Barons, Stefan the Pelted, Achilles, Nauhauer, Tanner, Falling Phoenix, Jacob, the Musielago, Dan, Florian, MFW, Mitchell, Aaron, Stefan, Snywolf, Drangili, Valerius, Monster Furby, and then the two newest Barons, Jake Clear and the Leopard. Thank you to Jake Clear and the Leopard for joining the channel and supporting the channel directly. I really do appreciate it. Then, of course, also the Counts, Locked-In, Wombat, Shifty, Rex Romanorum, Kazen, and Musion. I'm not actually sure. Musion, I haven't done because I was on the other channel, right, on Paradox Interactive for a while there. Welcome to the channel if I haven't already. Thank you for becoming a account member. I do really appreciate it. And then, of course, last but not least, the absolutely beautiful Dukes. That is Eric, Kiriana, Goodfield, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth, Lex, Solari, Soloing, Pixie, Thomas, and the newest Duke member, Nick. Welcome, Nick. Thank you for joining. Nick, hope that you are having a good time as well on the channel. Thank you for supporting the channel directly, and if you also want to support the channel directly, then consider buying the game via my affiliate link in the description, and consider becoming a member of the channel right underneath this video. Now, with that being said, later, alligator.